Hey guys, so in episode number 11, we will take care of the aiming downside function. So to get started, make sure to select the player in the hierarchy and then click here on add component, new script, and then create a new script. I called mine downside aiming. But again, you can use any name you want for each script, doesn't really matter. And I also want to keep mentioning why we created for this a separate script. So normally we don't need to do that, okay? We could easily add that all of that logic into our shooting script, for example, since these two are somehow related to each other. But by separating these things, first off, our project stays more cleaner. It also stays more organized, and it's also a more non-destructive workflow. And I will come back to this in just a moment. So if you have watched the last episode, you probably know that we did a few bug fixes inside the player move script and also inside the shooting script. And because these two scripts are separated from each other, it was actually first off much more easier to find these bugs, and second off to fix them. Now imagine if we would have been adding all the logic that we currently have inside one single script. That would have been quite a mess, I would say. Would probably be a really bloated file, and it would have been much more harder to have a organized script file, right? But because we separated these things, it's much more easier to find these things. For example, if someone comes new to our project and he wants to see where the shooting mechanics is located, well, it will be probably inside the shooting script. And the same happens for a player move script. Inside there, he will probably find all the mechanics for the player movement. Okay, and so by separating these scripts, we can easily access all of that stuff inside the inspector. And because we also used a lot of serialized fields, we can also easily manipulate all of that data. For example, inside a weapon database, we can easily add new guns and can manage them right here inside our Unity editor, instead of like heading over, for example, to the player move script and then adding or changing logic inside there. And I said also that it's a non-destructive environment. So what if in the future someone who's working on this project comes to the conclusion that we no longer want to have a downside aiming function for a player? Well, with our current setup, all we have to do is to uncheck that and it will be gone, the function. If we want to remove it entirely from the player, we can remove the component. But what if in the future we also come again to the conclusion that we in fact want to have the downside function again? Well, that's just a matter of drag and dropping the script again to the player, and we will have our downside aiming script again. So that's a non-destructive workflow, right? We don't destroy our code base or break our code base by removing the downside aiming script. And in fact, we can do this with a lot of scripts that we have created. Some are more deeply connected to each other. For example, the shooting script and the weapons database script are more deeply connected to each other. So if we would remove the weapon database, the shooting script won't work anymore. But at the same time, a shooting script makes only sense with having a weapon, right? So these two should be always attached to each other. And there are actually functions inside Unity where you can make sure that if somebody adds, for example, the shooting script, another script will be added automatically as well. Probably will do a separate episode about this as well, I guess. And so, for example, we have the scroll weapon script. So, for example, we could probably remove that script entirely from our player, and our project would still work. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say non-destructive workflow. Alright, so with that being said, let's take care of the aiming downside script. And I just wanted to mention that just in case you were wondering why we are creating a separate script, for example, for this here. So to get started, let's create a new vector tree and let's call it original position. And then another serialized feed, vector tree, and this one will be called new position, like so. And then I also want to create a transform for the gun hold reference. In an inside start, we will say original position will be equal to the gun hold reference local position. It's very important to see the local position. So what is this all doing? So the gun hold is used from our shooting script, where we basically instantiate the prefab to it, right? And then it holds the weapon. So let's just drag and drop the gun hold to our gun hold reference, and when we hit play, you will see that the position of the gun hold will be then added to original position. And when we click here on gun hold, you see that it sits at this specific position here. And this is now adapted to the original position. Okay, there we go. And we do this because once we release the right mouse button from our aiming downside position, we want to go back to original position, okay? Which is just literally these values here. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And then inside the update function, we will say input get mouse button, and then we will use the number 1, which is the index position for the right mouse button. And then we will say gun hold reference local position equals to vector3 lerp unclaimed. And lerp unclaimed takes 2 vectors, vector A and vector B, as you can see, and then also a float. And you use the float to interpolate between these 2 vectors. So for the first vector, we will use gun hold reference local position, and for the second one, we will take the original position and add to it the new position. And for the timer, or for the float, we will use a timer. So currently we don't have that. So let's create here also quickly a new float called timer. And that's actually all we have to do to transform from our original position to our new position. Right now, our new position is 0, 0, 0 in all directions. So nothing will really happen when I hold down the right mouse button, and we also have no timer. The timer is 0, so let's change that to 0.25. And I already knew or know the values that I want to use because I have played around with that before I actually recorded this lesson here. So just in case, just to show you what this actually does is, for example, if I add here the value of -0.1 and I press the right mouse button, you will see that it will change the position to -1. Okay. If I change it to -0.25, see it changes it basically to the middle, right? This already looks like an aiming downside position. And so we basically need to repeat this for all the other values as well. And because we haven't currently added any logic that transform our gun back to the original position, we can basically use the right mouse button to check out how it will look like, which comes in quite handy, right? Because this way we can, in live mode, test out the new position. So for Y, I will use 0.1, and then for Z, I will use -0.25 as well. So if I press down the right mouse button again, you see I have now this kind of setup. Again, you can use here any values you want, what you personally prefer. I think this way we have a really good looking aiming downside. And yeah, everything's working. We can still shoot. The only issue that I have is still these FPS drops. I hope I can fix them along the way. But yeah, as you can see, we got our aiming downside, everything's working, and we can even reload while we are inside the aiming downside. But with that setup, we can no longer go back to our original position, so we need to add an else statement. And here we just basically add the logic again and paste it in. But instead of going from the gun hold local position, I will simply say original position plus new position. And then we want to go back this time just to the original position. And for the timer, I will just use here the value of 1 because I found myself having problems using the same timer for the exit position. I'm not quite sure why this is so. I have to figure it out along the way, I guess. But for now, we will just use the value of 1. And so with that, it should already work. So when I hold down the right mouse button, it should go to our our new position. And once I release it, it should go back to your original position. So hold down right mouse button. And it seems like nothing is happening. That's because I made all these changes while I was in play mode. And just like I said in another episode, Unity is not saving these values when you're in play mode. So I have to retype them here in quickly. Luckily, I can remember them. And then for the timer, I had also 0.25. Okay, now it should work. So keep that just in mind. that Unity is not saving these values. So right mouse button, there we go, we have our aiming downside, which is pretty awesome. And if I release it, it goes back a little bit snappy, but again, I still have to figure out why we cannot use the same timer. But for now, at least the transformation to our aiming downside is really smooth. And we can actually do all of this stuff we could do before, right? We can shoot, and I can also reload while I'm inside the aiming mode. I can also run while I'm inside the aim mode and even jump. So just in case you don't want that, just in case you say, hey, I just want players to be able to be in the downside mode when they shoot, but not when they reload, for example, when they sprint or things like that. I will quickly show you how you can do that. First off, make sure to head over to the player move script. And then here I changed the is jumping and is running bool to a public, okay? Both of them, from serialized feed to public. And the same inside shooting, I changed is reloading to public instead of using a serialized feed. And inside our downside aiming script, we can basically create two privates, one for the shooting script, and then also one for the player move script, like so. And then we can quickly initialize them here. So shoot script is equal to game object, or actually not game object, get component, shooting. And then for the player move, we will say get component player move. Okay. And then all we need to do is to add the logic here. So for example, if I don't want users to be able to use the aiming downside when they sprint, I can say player move is running. Okay. So when we're running, we don't want users to be able, or players to be able to use the aiming downside. The same for player move is jumping. When we jump, we don't want players to be able to be in the aiming downside. And you could also add here the shoot script, for example, is reloading. So only when we are not reloading, we should be able to play or use the aiming downside. So let's test this quickly out. So I can go into the aiming downside mode, but for example, when I sprint, I can't do that. Okay, and the same happens when I jump. You see, for some reason it's still working. Okay, I have to change it if we're jumping. Weird. Jumping. Okay, now it works. Probably Unity hasn't compiled that correctly. So if I jump, it snaps back, but if I'm still holding down the right mouse button, it will go immediately back to the aiming downside whenever we land it again. Okay, and the same happens when I shoot the mag empty. You will see that once we reload, it snaps to the original position and then goes back again to the aiming downside position, as long as we are holding down the right mouse button. So I personally prefer to have the ability to be in the aiming downside even when somebody's reloading, but not when we are jumping or when we are running. So that's my personal setup. You can add here any boost you want or limit that the way you want it. With our current setup, it's just a matter of adding all of these boosts. And to make this a little bit more organized, so we create a separate function for that, and we call that one I guess just aim downside, and then here we copy that, cut that out, paste it in, and then here we just add aim downside. Okay, much more cleaner this way. Okay, so we got all of that down. I would say we are pretty much finished with our first person shooter. We have implemented pretty much everything that you will find in any modern first person shooter, I would say. For now, let's quickly check out everything. We can run, we can sprint, we can use the downside, which is pretty awesome. We can still shoot. Okay, it all works. We can reload, we can jump, and yeah, I'm pretty happy how this all turned out. I hope you guys really enjoyed it as well. So for the next episodes, I would say we will start to add some real enemies that charge us and attach the help script that we have created in an earlier episode, so that we can shoot them and stop them from charging us, I would say. And then we also will take care of the current weapon database system that we have, because right now we literally just take the data from a weapon database, and this works just fine, as you can see. The problem with that setup is that if I shoot, for example, a mag empty and I reload the magazine, you see we have now 32 and 32 bullets, right? But if I switch to another weapon and go back to the initial weapon we had, you see it goes back to the original ammo size of 64, okay? So we basically recharged our ammo size without really adding new ammo to it. And the reason why this is so is because we are literally just taking all of the data right now from our weapon database, and this never changes, obviously, because it's our weapon database. Here we define, hey, this particular gun called another gun, which is not really a good name, I would say, for a gun, but this gun will have only ammo of 64 and a magazine of 32. But we need a separate inventory in this case, where we load these weapons inside our inventory and then store also at the same time the current ammo and magazine size. Okay, so if you shoot a magazine empty and also all ammo empty, it should be empty until you reach like an ammo box, right? You shouldn't be able to recharge your or reload your ammo size by using the mouse scroll wheel, right? That doesn't make so much sense. So we will take care of that as well, because that's pretty much like the only bug that we currently have as far as I can tell. But other than that, I would say we are pretty much finished. The only things, like I said, enemies that charge us, we already have these cubes here that we can shoot at and destroy them. They already have the house system to attach to it, but it would be nice to have some charging enemies that we can shoot with some shooting effect, and yeah, also to take care of the like I said, the weapon database problem that we currently have. Okay, so with that being said, I hope you enjoyed so far. You can be pretty much proud of yourself, because we have done tons of work, I would say. It was also so far really a lot of fun for me, except for these FPS drops that I get sometimes. I think they're getting less and less, as far as I can tell. I'm not sure. I've checked out everything. It looks fine to me, but I'm still getting sometimes these drops here. Weirdly, but yeah, maybe I can fix them as well. Okay, as always, guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like it, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and yeah, thanks for watching. See you maybe next time. Bye.